Welcome to Creative Courage Chats, a search for a new understanding of creativity and problem solving. I'm Alex Raffi.
During the pandemic, I decided to do this everyday drawing thing because I had discovered over the years that I have my live drawing with my tablet. That's one thing. But even before I had the tablet, I would hold my phone over my hand and draw quick little things, and people seem to be fascinated with it. People like to watch other people draw, I think.
Yes,
And
yeah.
So I started doing that at the beginning of the pandemic, and just a sort of conversation, not even an idea, just like, this is what's happening. Let's just share a moment with each other, and I'll draw something that I'm thinking about it. It was about like the healthcare workers, the cashiers, the masks, the it was like every day was a different topic. And then it got into Black Lives Matter. I draw portraits of the people that have been killed, and it just has been morphing. Now it's every day on Instagram at 5. The community that I found on Instagram is really nice. There's a nice group of people, that almost regular people that join me at 5 every day, and some of them are from abroad. There's a nice little core group of people from Dublin, which I think is great. I mean, I'm sure they were drawn to mine because of my name, but now they're there all the time. And so I have a conversation with them as I'm drawing.
I think it's more than your name. I think it's the work, but yeah.
There's that, and then this other place called Haps TV got in touch with me, and they wanted me to do the same thing on their platform. It's more Haps TV is it's a startup, and it's a model for journalists live streaming most of the time around the world. It's a global community, and they're just starting up, so the community's building, and they stream it simultaneously on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. Sometimes YouTube, I think they're negotiating with all these platforms.
Sure.
So that's interesting, and that's a different kind of community. I haven't really, and Reddit too.
Sure.
I don't fully understand who's watching me, but I get more of an idea of people on Instagram.
Well, it's a heck of a lot more than you used to know. I mean, it's literally anybody who bought the magazine, right? Before it was just anybody. Anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and dive in, because I think I'm going to keep what we were talking about, because you mentioned some interesting things there that are important about new platforms that you're going to be on and everything. Anyway, so welcome to another Creative Courage Chats. I'm here with Liza Donnelly, and she's a fantastic cartoonist I've been following for a long time. And she's a treasure to cartooning and to journalism. I think that she's always had her finger on the pulse of the American culture and where we are currently, and her work is going to prove to be a record of our history of what we've done. And I just before this, I jumped on and I watched her TED Talk again, and it's fantastic. I highly recommend you watch her TED Talk. It's really good. And she is her work is she's very active. I mean, I don't know where you get the energy, but she's very active online. She has a lot of live feeds that she does. But thank you again for choosing to do this talk with me, Liza.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Alex. We've known each other on social media for years now.
Yeah.
I can't remember when we first started having a conversation.
I think it's through I think when we initially met, I was more actively a cartoonist online and doing some work online, and I might have reached out to you in terms of maybe a question or two, because I'm hungry for knowledge and wisdom from people, and you were kind enough to correspond with me, and you hung around, which was nice of you. But yeah, so today is great, because this is my initiation into the creative world was through cartooning, and I was an editorial cartoonist. I started in the UNLV paper, and then worked into being in my local newspaper in Henderson, Nevada. And the platform is fantastic. Having a voice to be able to communicate, and having the privilege of just putting yourself out there. You have a very interesting history, though, because you broke, and I hate to use the term, it's like so cliche now, but the glass ceiling. You kind of broke a glass ceiling with the New Yorker. Didn't you? A little bit. You were one of the first female cartoonists in that magazine. Is that correct?
No, it's more complicated than that. I mean, there were women drawing cartoons for the New Yorker in 1925 when it was founded.
Oh, okay.
So there were women in the beginning. They're wonderful women. I wrote about them in my book, Funny Ladies. So people want to read about history of the women cartoonists of the New Yorker. You can get that book. But I'm doing I didn't mean to plug this, but I'm doing a new edition of that book coming out next year.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, because I loved researching the history of the magazine. If you look at the New Yorker, through its cartoons, you can learn a lot about our culture and our history of our country. It's fascinating. And so I did that with the women. I looked at their cartoons. I tried to find out as much as I could about them. I'm sure I missed some. Since the book came out 10 years ago, I now know that I have missed some, and I'll put them in the new edition. And now there are more women drawing cartoons for the New Yorker than ever before. So there's a new cartoon editor there. She's a woman. And I know that David Remnick, the editor, is trying hard to get more diversity in the cartooning community at the New Yorker, and they're doing it. So, yeah. So I'm not. I'll say that in the 60s there were no women drawing cartoons, which is interesting. In the middle of last century. So when I came on in the late 70s, Roz Chas had just joined as well, and Nurit Karlin was there. She was an Israeli woman, New York. And then also Razanengo. So there were just very few of us when I started, but yeah.
You mentioned that when you started, the world was in a bit of turmoil when you started. We're kind of right, it's like full circle now, isn't it?
I thought that was rough, but this is like 10 times as bad as the 60s and 70s.
It's such a strange time, but I don't imagine that it's hard to find content at the moment, especially during just politically.
Yeah.
You're kind of billed somewhat as an editorial cartoonist, but you're more than that. I mean, you're a cultural cartoonist. I think is probably more accurate, especially since they seem to have melded the two.
Yeah. I think you're right. I've done New York. I've done political cartoons, editorial cartoons for the New Yorker ever since I started. And if you look at their cartoons, they are different than the kind of political cartoons you'd see in the newspapers. So they're more cultural. They're coming at it from like how politics affects individual people in life. That's how I began doing political cartoons, and that was what was comfortable for me, because even though I'm very opinionated, I was not comfortable being really loud with my opinion, like hitting people over the head with my ideas. So that's how I came at it from the side, really. And I think I was really, I believe strongly in that approach, because I think a lot of people don't want to hear loud yelling opinions. They'd rather have a conversation, and that's how I see cartooning. It's like I offer up a thought, I mean, it's not to say I don't do negative cartoons about certain political figures that I don't like, but yeah.
Right. I mean, and I shared this with you earlier, a letter from Berkeley Breathed, where he says that your job as a cartoonist is to kind of rattle the cage a little bit, is to annoy certain people. Otherwise, what's the point? There's certain sides. So, which leads me to kind of a thought I had before. I know I normally don't plan, but I did have this particular thought that hit me on the thing. But I started thinking about when you are thinking of an idea on to go ahead and process the idea. I know this is difficult because we don't sometimes reflect on how we process this stuff, but I don't know if I'm going to word this right. Is it your voice that you're trying to illustrate, or is it a larger voice that you're trying to illustrate? Because I think that sometimes you illustrate a thought, but it's connected with how your perception of what a group is seeing or perceiving. And do you want it to be disconnected from you personally, or do you understand what I'm saying?
I've never had that question before. That's a great question. I think that's a valid question for me anyway. I don't know for other cartoonists, but I think I probably do want it to be somewhat disconnected. It can't be totally, because I've drawn it and I thought of it, but
sure.
Like, for example, one cartoon I did for the New Yorker right after 9/11, I was having trouble drawing cartoons, as you probably were too. Like, what's the point? What's so funny anymore? We were really shocked. And I drew this little girl talking to her father, who's watching the news, and she says to him, "Daddy, can I stop being worried now?" And that cartoon, the New Yorker published it, and it's not funny. It's not. It's just is talking about what we were going through, and still are, frankly. So that's I like doing that kind of thing. Like we're sort of reflecting what I think people are feeling, and that's what actually that's a good point. That's what I've been doing with this pandemic time. You know, live drawing on paper, actually, not on my iPad, but just live drawing in my studio and talking to people about what we're going through and drawing.
Yeah, it's almost like an ongoing conversation. It's, of course, it is one-sided because you're just kind of doing the work on your end, but there seems to be a connection, like maybe that you're trying. See, that's the thing I think is important. Creative people. And I think everyone is creative. I think it's such I think there's people that say they're not. I think they're just people that are more connected to their childish view of the world. Because as a child, we are intensely creative, and then we become less so as we grow older. But I think those of us who delve into it, we're reaching and pulling at that child inside of us to try to see the world through our eyes as we're younger. And I think that it's important to have that empathy. I do think, okay, I'm going in a different direction. Do you believe that creatives, people that are deeply creative, that are often working just in general, especially people like you that are actively trying to connect with the nature of the world, there's a difficulty in managing that, because the level of empathy you have to have, sometimes it's difficult and it hurts. And it's painful because you see things and you feel things deeply, because that it feels like that's your job, is to feel things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to cast that out into other creatives, like. But I agree with you. I said to my husband the other day that I was unaware of this going on inside of me, but I was getting deeply tense and uncomfortable with the notion that there are so many angry and mean people out there. Maybe I've been naive all my life, but what Donald Trump is bringing out in our fellow citizens is deeply disturbing and hard to deal with, and hard to draw about.
So. Yeah, it's a strange time, because I agree with you. I every Saturday morning I tend to grab my laptop and write. Just whatever. For whatever reason, it's Saturday mornings is when because I kind of see my creative expression as taking things off my chest and putting it on a shelf. When I publish it, that's my shelf, and it's and I leave it, and then I try to forget it and I move on to the next thing, and so I purge, and I put it out there, and it's interesting to me the responses I get from both sides of the issue, because I'm really trying hard to have empathy for both sides, which almost feels impossible at times. But there's this thing that I think is important, that if you started to the way I kind of put it, and see what you think of this, is everybody, there are shared values. I don't care what side of politics you're in. People that are full-blown Trump people love their kids. They want to see their kids have a better life. They want peace. They don't want riots. They don't want fires. They want to have opportunity. They want to, now, do they want opportunity for everybody? No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about their personal values of what they want. If we can find those connections with those values and at least start the conversation there might be a way of doing this.
No, you and I think alike that way. I believe in the goodness of every person. I don't believe in the death penalty for that reason. But connecting, and that's why over this last 3-4 years, I've been trying not to be an attack cartoonist and more like an observational cartoonist, and more because it's too divisive, ultimately. Now I have to take now I am being a bit more attacking because I think that our democracy is at stake, and it's worrying me. So I am attacking a little bit more with my cartoons. But this is not in the New Yorker. You know that, but maybe your
Right.
viewers don't. It's the New Yorker is just, I don't do political for them anymore. They have other people doing that now, and I do political stuff for Medium.com and whoever else will buy it. But yeah, being like, this is sort of off. We're getting too political. Maybe I'm getting too political for you. I don't know. But
No.
I totally feel the same. I went to the inauguration. I didn't get into the booth where they all were, but I was there for CBS with CBS, and I live drew what I saw, and it was really an eye opener for me just to see all those really happy people, Trump supporters. They were just so happy, and they felt finally somebody's listening to me, somebody's paying attention to me.
Right.
And I drew them.
You can't discount that.
No, you can't.
No.
It's a little more complicated now, but so
yeah.
But I. Mm-hmm.
Well, real quick, let's kind of get off, because I mean that's a rabbit hole we could probably go into very deeply. Yeah, I want to go back to your work a little bit. So your style, it's very distinctive. You're one of those artists that you could not have any captions. You could just see a picture of a little girl that you could draw that would take you like 5 seconds, and people would know it was your work, right? And you have this really, and I think that's something that is a goal of many artists. It's just like when you hear a Stevie Ray Vaughan chord, it's Stevie Ray Vaughan. You just you can hear it. For me, this is kind of how when I was thinking about our talk. I was trying to kind of manifest a way I kind of thought of your work, and when I watched you, because especially people can watch you draw, which is interesting because you have a lot of videos, but it's almost like a whiplash. Where I think of it as you have an idea and it travels through your arm and it's on the end of your fingers with a pen, and you draw a single line that illustrates the brow, the nose, the mouth, and the chin, and it's an expression. With one line, you just go pow. And I think that there's something beautiful about the quick uniqueness of the style that you have, because with just a few strokes of your pen, you're able to illustrate something, a human value, something about a person. And I know that's something that has developed over the years, but can you talk a little bit about how you've come to that level, or,
Well, that's so nice of you to say all that, because it's wonderful to hear, because you work your entire career to achieve that, to try to get to that point where your work is recognizable, or that it's yours. But it's like you said, it's years of drawing and years of practice. And my cartoon hero is James Thurber. So that's how I started drawing when I was like 7 years old. I used to trace his cartoons and make my mother smile, and that's what got me hooked. And if anybody, if your viewers don't know him, look him up. You can just put in Thurber, Thurber, and you'll see his drawings, and you'll recognize them. And they're very, very simple. I think that's why I liked them as a kid. I thought, wow, these drawings are in the New Yorker. My parents had it around the house. I think these are almost childlike, these drawings, and to me, they look like they came directly from his brain to the paper. This came out of his gut, and his captions are always terrific too. Which probably take more work. But so it took years of drawing, and I think that simplicity is what I was going for all these years. There's been periods of my time when I've used more wash, more grayscale, and I don't like that as much, so I stopped doing that. But yeah, like for example, Alex, to do a finished drawing, I often have to do it numerous times to get it to look like I just whipped it off, like a New Yorker cartoon.
Yeah, but I've actually seen you do this, and with no non-photo blue pencil, which is a normal tool of a cartoonist, is to do these. I loved going to see Charles Schultz show where it showed all of his original work, which is of course twice the size that you're used to seeing it, and
Yeah.
you all the non-photo blue stuff. And wait, Snoop, I know this cartoon. Snoopy was doing this instead. You know, we had him like totally doing it, and
Yeah.
it's fantastic little
Mhm.
way of looking at the work. And I don't know if you've ever even probably used that. Have you ever used that for
I
your?
have this blue pencil, but what I also use is a light box.
Oh, okay.
Same thing.
Oh,
Really.
that helps.
Sometimes while I'm drawing, I put a little light pencil down and you can erase it later. But the best drawings are the ones that you don't have that blue pencil or that light box. You
Right.
just straight out, because there's a different feeling to the drawing, and it's not always easy to do. Like, I mean, I could just doodle and make an expression. You tell me, you ask me to draw somebody that's sad, I can do it really quickly. But if it's like trying to recreate a cartoon idea that I sold to the New Yorker and make it look the way I want it to look, it sometimes takes numerous attempts.
The thing I love of that's prominent in your work too is that if you were to take the illustration and the caption and separate them, they could stand on their own, but they wouldn't.
Oh.
But when you put them together, there's this thing. Right? It's where you're looking at an illustration like two kids in a sandbox playing, and you're like, okay, that's a nice cute illustration of two kids in a sandbox. And then at the bottom, you have, when we grow up, I'm going to be the boy and you're going to be the girl, kind of, or I'm going to be the girl and you can be the boy, or
Yeah.
what it is. And all of a sudden, it has this magic that happens that everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? Is that there's this connection.
That's the great part.
Yeah, and there's this weird connection that happens, and sometimes as the person who crafts this, that happens sometimes just accidentally, almost, doesn't it? I mean, or is it something that you spent like a lot? I mean, I want to try to. I know this is hard to describe too, because I mean, creativity is hard to describe, and even scientists don't even know what the heck it is yet. But you know what I'm saying? I don't know.
How does it happen?
But yeah, it's because everybody's familiar with what I'm talking about because they felt it. They felt it.
Well,
They,
people try the caption contest in the back of the magazine too.
Right.
And they know that it's not that easy. But we don't really, most of us don't work like that. We don't do a drawing and then come up with a caption. It's much more back and forth between image and idea and word. And sometimes it is immediate, like you said. There's one I did where there's people sitting on a couch, they have, friends, like a cocktail party, and the woman's coming into the room and she's got this tray, which you normally would have drinks on it, and it's got a cat on it, and she's saying, "Cat anyone?" And I don't know where that came from. I have no idea. I drew it, and I don't remember drawing it, but I don't remember. I think it was just I drew the cat on there, and the woman was saying, "Cat anyone?" And it just sort of came.
It's very Monty Python.
Oh, thank you. I love Monty Python.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Loving. Oh God.
They were cartoonists in the way that their jokes were very much like that.
Silly and wacky and it's over the top. So you have to sometimes. I'm not always good at that, pushing towards the ridiculous. It's just not my personality. My husband, who is a cartoonist, he knows how to do that. He knows how to make a piece of pie say something. I can't. It's not really in my DNA to have talking inanimate food, but everybody's different.
Your humility is interesting also, because the thing that I think I found in a lot of artists in general, because I've talked to so many, is there's this humility in the work. There's always this, I'm not sure, and I don't know. I'm just honored that people appreciate it. But it's funny, the contradiction is, boy, you need a lot of courage to put yourself out there and to sit there and express who you are and what you are in a way that everybody can now form an opinion. And a lot of people are terrified of that. I think you even talked about fear in the TED Talk. I think it was a thing in your TED Talk. And I think that a lot of people struggle with the fear of delving into putting themselves out there. Would you say that your parents had a big part of your courage in expressing yourself?
Oh yeah, they just encouraged me. And my colleagues in my school, and they're just like, because I started drawing so young, I think I was painfully shy. I think I learned later that they were really worried about me because I was so shy. But I think I turned to drawing because it was a way to be by myself and do something and not have people bother me, ask me to talk, and it was a way to communicate. It was a way to make people happy with what I was doing, drawing. So I was going there. So yeah, so they encouraged me to draw. They just gave me paper and pencil, and my teachers and colleagues also did the same. And that, I think that's what gave me courage, even though I was afraid of people for so many years, just afraid. But I guess I wasn't afraid in my work. And,
Right.
having the guts to go drop off my work at the New Yorker, I don't know where I found that courage or that chutzpah.
That's a tough room.
Well, I didn't go in there, of course. You don't go in.
But I mean, the process, it's a tough room, isn't it? I mean, for them to approve the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very. And the notion that I would presume that my work would be okay, would be appropriate, would be good enough. I don't know where I got that, but I guess from years of being encouraged.
Right. I remember I submitted tons of work for syndication for years, and I always got rejection. But I did get a handwritten note from King Features that said, "Keep going." It just said, "Keep going," and that's all I got. And I framed that. I was like, that was pretty good.
Yeah, I know.
You know, it's a tough industry.
Oh, it's really hard, and it's it's even harder now. I think I don't. Even though the New Yorker is buying more from more people, there seem to be more cartoonists, more names popping up than ever before. So there's more of a bit of a chance if you want to submit your work. But it's harder to make a living because they might buy one and then never buy another one from you. So it's a tough, and I don't even know about syndication. I don't know how that works. I don't know how people can make a living there.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough industry for sure. I do think that I like the idea of expressing the importance of people that are watching, that are parents who actually in thinking of their kids, and the importance of encouraging that silliness in them, or that thing that may not be clear that it's valuable in terms of you trying to project what you imagine as their future. But the importance of allowing a child to explore things, no matter what it is, I think is incredibly important. Now, you was your art.
Yeah. I think that's what I got from my parents, was no pressure to be something, but myself, Right. And I think that's how I've tried to raise my kids, our kids, and give them the tools, give them the things that they need to do that. And for me, it was pen and paper and pencil.
Yeah, I was very similar to you, where I discovered that I could draw and that I was good at it, and that people responded in a positive way. It became kind of my shield about my shyness and also my superpower. And I was always the kid that could draw. I was in a classroom. He's the one that can draw.
Exactly,
so,
me too.
And then it was like it was almost like that was my identity, as I grew up. And it was funny because my parents were very encouraging. And then one day I had a project to do for school where I had to do a lot of artwork, and I had to actually do cartoons, and it was very fun. And then it was really odd. It was the teacher asked for us to ask our parents to contribute to this book of art, something that they could do, which was really interesting and out of the box thinking for the teacher. And my mom wrote a poem and did an illustration, and it was beautiful. And I was like, wow, Mom, you can draw. I was like, wow. It was like my mind blew. I was like, I couldn't believe my mom could draw and that she could do. And I'd never seen anything. And part of me was thinking that her whole life is probably this thing that she carried with her. And she never really used it. She encouraged it. And maybe in that way, she got the fulfillment, But there's a lot of artists out there, I think, that are very talented that don't do it, that are mechanics, that are maybe working in retail. It reminds me of this thing, because I told my niece this. My niece one time, she's an artist. She's fantastic. She's way better than me in many ways. But she called me one time and said, Uncle Alex, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore because my teacher, he's such a jerk, and he's trying to make me do things I don't want to do and everything. And I don't think I'm going to quit being an artist. And I said, go ahead. I said, who cares? You decided to be an artist. You're great at it. But if you don't want to do it, that's fine. You'll be like Elvis Presley, who works at a gas station, but when he picks up a guitar, he's amazing. And then he goes back to being a gas station attendant. You know, it's this thing. You're already it. It's you decide what you're going to do with it. It's on you. And
Exactly. That's right. That's right.
and then she said, like, I don't like talking to you about this, Uncle Alex. And now she's actively working as an artist. She's getting hired roles and stuff. But it's kind of like, you know what? You don't need to be told you're great. You already know you're great. Just earn some courage and make things happen.
No, I think I don't like to teach cartooning except for really little kids, because I feel like if you really want to be a cartoonist, you'll find a way to do it.
Right.
You'll find a way to break into that magazine or do that work that you really want. And so I know a lot of people teach cartooning, and I'm despairing that. I just can't really do it.
Yeah. It's funny because when people talk about my creative workshop, they say Alex teaches creativity, and I was like, that's crazy. No, I don't teach it. I remind you about it. I just remind you. I remind you that you've got it.
Yeah, and I agree with you about everybody, because I used to say in some talks that I've given that my father said to me a long time ago when I was in the middle of my career, he said, well, you got the creative genes in the family. I said, no. I mean, you are creative in your own way. He was a doctor. And I know that all fields have a certain level of creativity. And the way, for example, the way he would listen to his patients, you know, that's creative. The way he would respond to them, or you know, it's a broad term. It's a broad definition of creativity, but I think it's a good one.
Well, I think this is what I want to ask you too, is I was thinking about this, it just came to me. You listen to the world in probably a different way because of what you do, right?
Probably, yeah.
Where you could be in a restaurant and you're probably looking at what's happening around you.
Yeah, I think, but it's so intuitive now that I don't even know I'm doing it.
Right. Because you're always hungry for data, for content and data, right? I mean, it's coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not.
And that's what you do. So when I'm out in the world, I'm watching and listening, but I don't know that I'm doing it. And maybe I'm doing it differently than somebody else. And I am, because I'm a different person. But then the work is when you get to your table, your studio or wherever, and accessing what you've picked up. And that's the work. That's the hard part. Is, like you said, you just take Saturday mornings, you just write. You have to know how to do that. You have to do it. You have to do it for one thing, know how to do it. And then also to listen. And for me, I say it's sometimes listening to yourself think. So you're listening to your mind go over what happened over the week or what's happening in the news right now. And you pull out words, you pull out feelings, you pull out things that you notice.
I think that's really awesome what you just said.
Oh, yeah?
Listening to yourself think, because I think that you're right. I think that there is the source of your inspiration is almost sometimes separate from you, and you have to kind of it's always there. It's just, are you going to take time to pay attention to what it's telling you? It's almost whispering to you quietly, and you're feeling that. Are you actually taking that information and doing something with it? I think that's something we carry with us. Not to get too weirdly philosophical about it, but you know, I try to find metaphors to try to explain to people that we don't know who we are, really don't know. And when we feel inspiration, it's when we tap into figuring it out a little bit. Like, you know, it's like all of a sudden there's something that makes me feel like I'm connected with something bigger, and that feels like inspiration. That's the definition of inspiration. And then the trick is to act on it, you know, and to, what are you going to do with that? And how are you going to make it better? But anyway, you know, I like to ask people I'm talking to, if you have a chance, and I know you're talking about teaching cartooning, but in general, if you had a chance to talk to, well, you've probably had this chance, but what kind of advice would you give to someone that is yearning to express themselves in some way, and they're trying to find out a way to do it? Do you have anything that you would suggest to them?
Just do it. Don't stop yourself. Just draw or doodle, or and I'm focusing on the drawing part, not writing, but like what you said you do every Saturday morning. Just do it. Let it all come out, and don't edit yourself. Don't stop yourself. Just draw. And I have to tell myself to do that sometimes. Like when you're sitting here and I don't have any ideas. I don't know what's funny. I can't do this. They're not going to buy this. They're not going to think this is funny. They haven't bought from me in a month. They're not going to buy from me this week. Why should I bother? All those things go through your head, and you got to push them away. And also, you have to be patient with yourself, because you're going to have those moments, right? Don't make them sabotage everything. Those thoughts, those negative thoughts. Just say, okay. And this is not an original thought. I've heard other people advise this. Probably you have heard it too. Like you say to those negative thoughts, okay, you're here. I acknowledge you. Okay, that's fine. Go sit over there. And I have something else I want to do. So you just acknowledge that block, and then either try to continue doing it, drawing or whatever, writing, and then come back, or go away, make some coffee, make lunch, whatever, come back and try again.
Mm-hmm.
Have patience with yourself.
Have patience with yourself. That's important.
That's a good one. Yeah, I think that's important.
And I know that you're a skilled artist. You've been doing it your whole life, and so that's where a lot of your confidence comes from in your work. But I think there's something to be said for the need. You don't need to know what it's going to be, like what you're doing, how it's going to turn out. It's just sit down and just work. Just do something.
So often it happens to me, like with this live drawing thing at 5 o'clock, I don't have an idea, and I just sit down and start to draw, and all of a sudden, and that's often, maybe this is helpful to your audience too, I used to use a big piece of paper like this big and put it on my desk, and it would have, each week I'd have a different paper, and it would have words and doodles and phrases all on this one piece of paper, and they made no sense with each other, but sometimes a random collision would happen with them, or one of the words would go into my brain, and I would be thinking about a sandbox, children in a sandbox, and it would come out of that child's mouth.
Right.
So you never really know that the randomness of it is also
yeah, I think I'm trying to think of the cartoonist who said that, but I think it might have been Bill Watterson. I don't know if anybody. I'm thinking, for some reason I'm thinking it was him, but I don't know if he's even been interviewed by many people, because he's a very private guy. But something about it gets to the point, and I imagine you're at this point, where you just have to draw two characters, and then they just start talking to each other. It's almost like it's just putting them on paper. And then life comes to them, and it almost starts coming to you. Start hearing the voices.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure it does happen, but there's a cartoonist friend of mine. I was on a Zoom with her yesterday for a panel, Victoria Roberts, and she actually does do that. She considers her characters. She's a New Yorker cartoonist. Her characters actually are, in her mind, they are real people, and she uses sometimes the same people in her cartoons. I don't really do that. And she also, one of her characters, she said, her name's Nona. She didn't work in the cartoon world. This character, Nona, she said, I couldn't get her to work. She didn't work well on the paper. So now Nona is actually a character that she performs on stage.
Oh. So she has to express Nona's point of view. It just doesn't live on.
To her, Nona's a real thing.
That's fascinating.
I don't quite like that, but I think you're right. There are some of my characters are regular. I don't think of them as that, but they are,
Well, it's been amazing chatting with you. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I really appreciate you taking the time to share some of your thoughts on cartooning. And I think this is a great chat, and hopefully people will get a lot out of it. And I'm going to put it out there and everything. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. It was really fun. I mean, the interviews that go in a different direction. This is really fascinating to talk about it in your terms, like creativity.